event. Without wasting much time, I'd like to introduce our first speaker. He is in the person Michael Streed, who is a renowned forensic facial imaging expert from the United States, widely known as the SketchCop. Mr. Street is a retired police surgeon and an award-winning forensic facial imaging expert with over 4 decades of experience in law enforcement and forensic artistry. He has played a vital role in numerous high-profile investigations, including Baton Rouge serial killer. Today, Mr. Street will present on forensic facial imaging updates, discussing the latest advancements in technology and artistic reconstruction that continue to shape the vital area of forensic investigation. Let us all welcome Mr. Michael Street, aka the SketchCop. Mr. Michael, please, you have the floor to yourself. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me today. I'm going to get this slideshow of mine going. Alrighty. Okay, so my presentation today is going to be on providing a forensic facial imaging update. I just want to show my face on screen and say hello to everybody and let you know I'm a real person and not some bot somewhere. So I'm going to go ahead and kill my camera, and that way we can focus on the slides and not my happy face this morning in the beautiful United States of America here. All right, so I want to provide you a forensic facial imaging update. And a lot of people don't know about forensic facial imaging. It's kind of a really big nebulous term to people, and it actually encompasses a lot of different elements. And it's one of the recognized forensic disciplines under the International Association for Identification, a worldwide, well-known, well-regarded scientific organization for forensic science. So. And I want to thank you for the beautiful introduction. I usually, with my slides, just give a brief intro to myself, my experience. I don't have a scientific background. I actually am a retired police sergeant, detective, investigator, and I first got into forensic facial imaging back when back when it's in its infancy, when people were just pretty much using composite sketches to identify the faces of criminals and such. So I kind of grew along with the discipline throughout my career, which I ended in 2008 as an active police officer. I've gone on to work as a consultant and have my own company providing forensic facial imaging consulting for worldwide law enforcement. But I have over 1,300 hours of specialized training in different law enforcement investigative techniques, homicide, sexual assault, and my real strength, my forte is interviewing eyewitnesses. But I have actually 45 years of experience ongoing and currently as a forensic artist slash forensic facial imaging expert slash consultant. So you'll see some of my career highlights there. And currently, I am the principal owner of SketchCop Solutions. We're located in California, about an hour southeast of Los Angeles. And although I've been doing it 45 years, I officially incorporated in 2007. So what we do is we provide forensic facial imaging consulting services, products, and training for a global law enforcement audience. We have a training facility here in the Los Angeles area, as well as our online training academy, where we train the future forensic facial imaging people who are interested in this, basically. You have to excuse me, I'm still waking up. It's a little early in California here in the United States. So my goal today is to make the attendees aware, those of you who are attending wherever you are in the world, about the role that forensic facial imaging plays during criminal investigations and the value added as an investigative resource, including a modern take. And, when I talk about updates and modern techniques, really, a lot of it depends upon what you yourself are willing to invest or able to afford to invest in terms of equipment and training, as well as your organization, if they use it, if they ever thought about using it, what their budget for is, and such. So There are a few things I want to dispel. First of all, when we talk about these forensic facial imaging techniques, unlike fingerprints, DNA, and other other forensic techniques, it's not a positive identification tool. Like with fingerprints, you've got established markers, DNA, same thing, tool marks, tire tracks, anything where there's, peer-reviewed established procedures and identifying matching marks and such are known to be positive identification tools. Forensic facial imaging is not that, but what it is I look at it as being a filter that helps you get closer to your positive identification of a suspect. So in other words, it's used to corroborate eyewitness statements and identify evidence. I've had cases where I've drawn sketches where there was an unknown suspect, and the sketch led to the identification of a suspect, which led to evidence that would have otherwise been not found and unidentifiable. And the reason why I wanted to stress this first off is that being being a filtering tool is because, we're hearing a lot of stories about, with facial recognition, people, law enforcement agencies going out and making arrests based solely on the results of, I'm sorry? Okay, I'm sorry. Here I was hearing some background noise there. Anyway, so law enforcement agencies going out making arrests based solely upon the results of facial recognition queries, or they take a composite sketch and they go out there and they compare it to somebody on the street and wind up arresting them. And this is not what these are meant for. These they're meant again as an investigative aid to corroborate eyewitness statements, identify evidence, and to give you probable cause to go out and further investigate that person. So what I want to talk about today was four uh, elements and four recognized uh, techniques of forensic facial imaging. The first one being facial composites, facial reconstruction from the skull or postmortem imaging, skull to face overlay, and facial recognition. Facial recognition being a hot topic these days around the world and in use at several facilities, airports, city watch cameras, private businesses and such. So now I want to start out talking about facial composites. And these are composite sketches that you often see on the news, and they're the most visibly used form of forensic facial imaging techniques used by law enforcement. And those are, again, the composite sketches you see on the news, that you see online, on social media and such, that several police departments post. And they're basically images of criminal suspects or created by forensic artists by way of interview of a eyewitness or a victim, or something maybe taken from video, a CCTV video feed that's used again to identify a possible potential suspect. Now, there's two different ways that law enforcement accomplishes this, and this is one is a traditional hand-drawn image by a forensic artist, and it's done either via analog, pencil, paper, or other art medium or media, or digitally using digital tools and sketch software. So, for example, a lot of people, associate composite sketches with, hand-drawn pencil to paper, um, but yet you can use pretty much anything, a crayon, pastel, oil painting, whatever the artist is comfortable using is usually how the sketches are created. Or folks like myself who've migrated to using digital tools, sketch software, it pretty much emulates what analog does, only it allows you more options. One pen stylus, you can use software that allows you to duplicate a pencil, oil painting, pastels. And the advantage of this is that you're not having to carry around, suitcases full of art materials and easels and such, whatever you're comfortable drawing on. And now you can use an iPad, you can use a Wacom tablet or maybe one of the other many tablets that are out there, and condense your toolkit down to something that's more manageable, more portable. And even now, we're talking about, using with remote with COVID and some other limitations and such. Now, we go online and do these remotely. Another solution is a software-driven solution used by non-artists, which we'll talk about, and that's specialized software on a PC, a laptop, or tablet, whatever you're using as a medium in terms of, I'm sorry, this PC, tablet, or tablet, depending whichever tool you're using. And again, when I first started out, there was just basically these big clunky PCs, and then we went to laptops, and now tablets and phones. Most people are using phones as a digital device to consume learning, to communicate with others and such. So this is an example of a traditional hand-drawn kit, pencils, erasers, erasing shields, and a horsehair brush. And this is what I used to use when I first started out. When I first started out, I was using nothing but pencil and paper, and that's it. And then as I got more equipment, the bag got bigger and it became a little more cumbersome. Now, this is an example of using a digital tool with software, using a pen stylus. And this is a device you can pretty much take just about anywhere because, crime, it knows no boundaries and not everyone is as mobile. So there are times you may have to respond to a police department or another location to create a composite sketch of a suspect. And so digital tools greatly enhances that. Now this goes back to where we're at now, how we got from pencil to paper to software and tablets and specialized software. It started in 1955 with the Smith & Wesson Identikit, and this is an example of where they basically had a wooden box here of acetate overlays, and they interviewed an eyewitness, and they would take these pieces of the face and they would overlay them and paper clip them together and make crude Xerox copies of these facial images and such. And they worked. They were fairly crude, but they worked. And these are some examples of some beards, glasses, hairstyles, and they're just like little cards you just laid on top of one another to build this face. And regardless of what you use, what method you use, um, the art of creating a composite sketch is truly in your ability to connect with an eyewitness. This is something that's eyewitness because you're taking a victim or eyewitness's statement and creating an image from it. So here's a couple more examples as the as computers developed and software capabilities developed. Some companies decide to get in the game and create software programs for police who did not have access to trained forensic artists to be able to um, have anyone be able to create a facial composite using software. The problem is that again, the images were fairly crude. There were limitations to them, and the tools just weren't there. So these are examples from a software program my company created called SketchCop facial composite system. And so what I wanted to do was everyone was busy trying to make photographic composites of suspects via computer. And so what would happen was people would see a facial composite and they would instantly assume that that was a photograph of someone they were looking for. And people were used to seeing sketches and such. So we created a software program that would be able to, create sketch-like images that look like a sketch artist created it. And the nice thing is it creates an opportunity for those who are not artists, but are very good at talking to people to be able to create facial images for law enforcement investigations, whether they were sworn members of the department, they were actually police officers or investigators. It didn't matter if they were the boss's secretary or if they were an evidence technician. If they were able to be tech savvy enough to use a computer, use and manipulate the software, and they were able to have good conversations with people and talk to people, then they too could create composite sketches. And so what had happened was, is when they first started out, you know, police artists were still the preferred tool because there were limitations to the software programs. You can only have so many tools. You can only do so many things typically with the facial composite software program. So having trouble advancing this thing here. So if you look at, oops, if you look here at the interface, it's a very easy interface for people to read. No drop downs, everything's on the screen, and you're able to create effective composites with just the click of a mouse, and not a lot of tools, not a lot of codes, not a lot of, you know, magic, so to speak. And the good thing is where we've come from using a pencil and paper to computer software programs on tablets and laptops and phones and such, is it's more cost effective than training a single sketch artist for the police departments. Now you could train more people for less. You could have this available 24/7. So if the artist was on vacation, you still had a cadre of people that could, you know, log into the computer system and create a composite. And you know, what people didn't think of before is that uh, these images are actually intelligence tools, and they're real-time intelligence. So because when you have a crime that's very serious and you want to get an image out to the public right away, you want to be able to call upon someone that can create that image, put it up on social media, put it out to the news feed and such, and get this person identified quickly before they committed more crimes, hurt more people. And the great thing about it is too, it reduces your investigative cycle time so you can use your resources more effectively in other areas as well. So one of the arguments was with artists that, well, you know, the computer program can't do what we do because we can use a pencil and erase, and we can draw certain things and whatever. And now with programs like Adobe Photoshop, especially with its neural filters, you can colorize the composites. They have face-aware tools where you can do non-destructive edits and manipulate the various facial features based upon eyewitnesses' input. So you can really do a lot more with the computer software-driven solutions than you could do with just a pencil and paper before. DNA is something that's fairly new in terms of creating composites. And when we're talking about updates and modern techniques and such, there are some codes they've been able to unlock in the DNA that can talk about the facial shape, you know, skin tone, freckles, hair color, eye color, the ethnicity, the ethnic background of the perpetrator. And they've been able to create DNA sketches, and they've been successful. They're fairly generic, and they're learning more and more about the genetic code in terms of, you know, how to create a face from a person's DNA. But right now, you know, this is pretty much what they're getting: skin color, eye color, hair color, freckles. Um, and again, something it's going to take a little bit more. And this company has a forensic artist that works for them, but there's a little more that goes into it in terms of, you know, crafting the image and refining the image and such, and making it. You can't really work with an eyewitness because with DNA you don't necessarily have an eyewitness. But if you do, the combination between the DNA information left behind and the image created and the eyewitness can create a powerful tool. And this is something too that where we've been able to leverage technology and update the way we do composites. This is a screenshot of a remote session I held with an eyewitness, and you can really touch anybody. Most people these days are on their phones. I'm willing to bet you there's a lot of people at this conference here today that are using their phones to access the information and participate. And it's the same way with facial composites these days. People are pretty busy. It used to be pretty easy to get someone to come down to the police station to sit for an interview session. But nowadays, everyone's busy. They got school, they got work, there's kids. They only have so much time allowed. So we reach out to them via remote platforms like Zoom and some of the many others out there, to connect our screens to their screen so they can actually watch what we're creating on our end. So I do this all the time. I'd say 99% of my interviews now with eyewitnesses are done via Zoom. I have clients all over the world in several countries, South America, the Middle East, India, Africa, actually. I've done composite sketches for the police in Uganda, and it's all via remote platform. So using composite software and digital tools and remote uh, learning or interview communication platforms allow us to expand our reach and be able to um, affect investigations worldwide. And it's been very convenient. It's been very effective, a way to do this. So this is something that's new that not thought of. Most people think that you have to be in the same room to watch the eyewitness and watch their facial reactions and how they react to the sketch. I find that, with a lot of people, um, the image is a very powerful tool to them. And sometimes when they see the result, they'll start shaking, they'll start crying, they'll get physically ill. And the thought with police administrators and experienced investigators that you have to be there to gauge that. And, when I'm watching people on screen or talking to them, via telephone or via Zoom when their cameras are off, I can hear it in their voice, or when I see them on camera, I can see their visible reaction. So I think the sketch results I get are just as good, if not better, in some cases, via Zoom than if they were sitting right there. So that's certainly something to consider. Here's an example of a screenshot from a phone. Another uh, way that we're doing things differently with forensic facial imaging is in trying to identify the deceased. And it used to be, you'd go to a morgue and you would stand over the body and you'd take out your trusty pencil and your pad of paper and start sketching from that. And morgues are pretty unsettling places for some people, and depending upon where you are, they get pretty busy, and you're busy dancing around the surgical table with the trying to stay out of the way of the pathologists and people who are working on the body and such. It gets a little cumbersome sometimes. The smell's a little disturbing. Um, but you need to get these images out to the public, and you certainly can't do it when you show a really gross face that's really upsets people, because they're more focused on that than they are who that person could be. And so we went from pencil sketches to now AI assisted tools where we can create color morgue images that they can put out to the public, that someone will recognize the person who is deceased. And there's a lot of, I mean, there are hundreds of thousands of dead bodies all over the world that remain unidentified, and they've been doing a great job with forensic investigative genealogy. But sometimes it's good to get a face out there as soon as possible, because if the person hasn't wandered far from home, someone is likely going to see the face and recognize that person. And since a lot of these people are murder victims, you want to be able to identify the person, because the suspect, it might be someone known to them. And so it's important. And since everyone's on social media these days, I shouldn't say everyone, but a good majority of people, law enforcement agencies who put these images online have been able to identify people much quicker, because someone sees a friend of theirs they haven't seen, or someone that they know that they're close to. And the nice thing about AI is it cuts down the time it takes to generate images like this. This is an example of using AI. So this is an artist sketch on the left, and this is I use AI to update this sketch by another artist just to see how it would compare and how AI would affect it. And it gives a little bit more lifelike look that it's somewhere between a photograph and a sketch, so it adds enough realism, but there's enough artistic um, influence there to allow people to believe that it's an approximation and not exactly, like doesn't look exactly like the person. That's the danger with AI and some of these other technologies and such. It creates these hyper realistic images of these people sometimes, and people are very literal sometimes, and they think that that's the exact image of the person. So I like to combine a little artistic influence with something that has a little more realism, so people's mind allows that. They allow that leeway that it's not exactly that person, but it could be someone who looks like this. In a lot of cases, all that's left behind is the human skull, and that's the base image is typically used for a facial approximation or what's known as skull reconstruction. We use CT lasers, I'm sorry, CT scans, 3D laser scans, and photogrammetry. What used to be, again, this is where we have the update in this is, I used to go to the coroner's office, I'd grab the skull and I had, special containers for them to bring them back to my office. And sometimes I'd have to clean them off, some tissue and things like that, and cut and glue tissue depth markers based on information provided by anthropologists determining the tissue depth in certain areas of the skull. And that would take a lot of time. And now with the CT scans and the 3D laser scans and the photogrammetry, you can go to the coroner's office and actually scan the skull with a 3D laser. Oops. The photogrammetry and 3D laser example. But oftentimes now what we're able to do again with digital platforms is we're able to have the investigating or requesting law enforcement agency actually upload CT scans to a file sharing service, and they send us the files, and we're able to make 3D models of them from those CT scans and such to do digital facial reconstruction. Here's an example of the traditional technique of the 3D clay. You get a skull or a model of a skull, a 3D printed model. You'd have to cut and glue tissue depth markers on the different facial landmarks, lay in the clay, and build it, mold it, sculpt it, put any artifacts like wigs on it and such, maybe add some makeup or paint to it. Took several days. And if you had to walk away from the skull when you're sculpting it, you got a certain amount of clay on it, it's hard to remember what's underneath it unless you've got photographs, of course. And there's tactile feel, being able to look at it is oftentimes different than looking at a photograph of it. So in the digital world here, now what we can do is we can save different asset files. So what I do is once I get the CT scan, I convert it to a 3D skull in a virtual space. I'm able to take a set of tissue depth markers I already have pre-measured and place them on the skull digitally, so I can sculpt the digital clay onto it and finish up my image and such. And again, big time saver. You can do more with that, less time. And now when it's covered up with clay and you have to leave for a couple days to do something else, you're working on another case, you can come back and use the transparency tools to actually see the skull underneath the virtual clay and see your landmarks, any injuries to the skull that might influence the surface and how someone's face is going to look. This is an example of a image I generated via AI, and I was able to just basically take that image, and lay it over the skull and mold it and shape it to fit the skull using Photoshop tools, and then going into a painting program and doing some digital art with this. And this person was probably an elderly homeless person. So you can get a lot out of these digital tools and assets, copying and pasting tools into Photoshop and some of the other image editing programs out there. And this is just several examples of images that I've reconstructed digitally using CT scans and using some of the digital tools and AI. These are the most recent ones, this elderly person, this gentleman here, that I use AI. A lot of times I use Photoshop and like I say, other digital tools. I don't use pencil and paper anymore. This gives me more variety, increase the quality of my images, increase the different types of tools and assets I can use in a shorter period of time. Um, and then the delivery tools, everything I do now is typically delivered via file sharing service if the file's too large, or I attach it to an email and send it to the law enforcement agencies. Skull superimposition is another way that they used to identify skulls. If the person was thought to be a missing person, they would look at the files, and if the physical description of the person's body and some of the clothing may have matched a missing person, they would get they would take the skull and they would have a 2D photograph, and they would have all these multiplexing cameras and video cameras and such, and try to using video overlay the picture onto the skull. And it took a lot of equipment, it took a lot of time, uh, and such. And now today there's a software program, Skeleton ID, where you can actually scan and upload the skull and use and then import a 2D photo and use the tools within the software, the swiping, the opacity tools, and the ability to place depth markers on there to match up the skull and the face. And this is used in cases where DNA is really limited or non-existent, in cases of mass migrant disasters, people crossing over the ocean or crossing a body of water or crossing deserts and such, and they perish during the migration process, enforced disappearances, mass graves, things like that. And this is a great tool for filtering um, for in the event that you want to confirm it using DNA. I mean, just taking random DNA tests, it's pretty expensive. It's cost prohibitive, and in this software, Skeleton ID, you can actually keep a missing persons file, so to speak, of photographs and identifying information, case number, law enforcement agency case numbers and such, and run um, large searches and such, and it's AI assisted, and so it'll give you a list of probable candidates, and an expert like a forensic anthropologist or someone like myself who's certified to use the software and pass and went through rigorous testing to be able to do these comparisons such, and it can come up with a probability rating in terms of if it in fact is the person, and then you can confirm that through DNA, dental X-rays, and other types of positive ID identification sciences. And facial recognition, of course, is a big deal nowadays. And facial recognition, you'll see, like on this example here, how it rates the candidate as opposed to the search photo. And there's different algorithms that people use to accomplish this. Uh, and again, this is just a percentage based upon the algorithm and the threshold that the user sets. And it's certainly not probable cause to go out and arrest somebody based upon like a 90% rating or an 88% rating, or you can set it however you want. So that's something that is a great ID tool these days that used to have to go through mug books, mug shop books and things like that. And now you can go from analog to digital by taking digital booking photos and having a robust database, so you can use it to compare CCTV images and live feeds with static images and mugshots and such. So AI, we're starting to see it faster than I think anyone ever expected. It's pretty much baked into most software programs now. I use it as a workflow tool as opposed to a total solution. I think we're far away from a total solution. And in the artist case or the forensic facial imaging expert's case, it's valuable in terms of developing workflow, in terms of improving quality, cutting down time, cutting down expense for your clients and such. And it's something that's here. So I think my 40 minutes is just about up. But anyway, so this is how you can contact me. If you're interested in learning more about facial composite sketching and using facial composite software, or any of these other tools, you can go to our website at sketchcop.com and see what we offer and what we've got. And then, of course, social media. I'm pretty active on Facebook and such. I'm on LinkedIn as well. So feel free to reach out and contact me if you have any questions about any of these techniques we talked about, and especially facial composites and eyewitness interviewing, which we've got a real strong expertise in.
Thank you very much, Mr. Michael. That was a very insightful presentation. We are so grateful. We learned something from you, and I'm sure we'll be using it in our careers and our professions too. But before we move on, I would like to ask if anyone has a question for Mr. Michael, then he can answer. We'll just take three questions from the participants. So if you have any questions, please say it in the chat box, then we can address the question. Thank you.
Yes, please. Any questions you have, please put it in the chat box and I'll go ahead and answer it.
Okay, I think we have a question from Dana and yes, Mr. Sketch, please.
Okay, so
Good
yeah, Dina asked a good question. So the question is basically, if some people are not if some people are not good at describing what happened, or if someone or describing someone's face, we use visual aids. So in other words, if I'm interviewing you and you're trying to describe facial features, after you describe the face to the best of your ability, I have different photographs in a facial identification catalog, and I'll go through and show you photographs so you can show me actually which feature looks the closest. So it really gives you a chance to explain yourself verbally and confirm what you're telling me by pointing to a photograph that looks most like that facial feature that the suspect has. And so okay, so Amy, yes, it is not open access, but we try to democratize it the best as we can by offering it is a standalone perpetual license, and then a more cost-effective is a subscription service for individuals and for law enforcement agencies. So there are some countries, their government requires that they have perpetual standalone software licenses, which is usually more expensive. And although it's a one-time cost, they pay for updates and such, either through a maintenance program or a la carte. With the subscription service, is substantially lower than that, and we take care of all the updates. It's included in the subscription costs and such. One of the things I found is that some of the costs for facial composite software, it was just ridiculous. Some people are still spending thousands of dollars a year, and ours is basically in some cases less than $100 US per year. In other cases, it's just a couple $100 US a year, but far, far less. And then of course, we train on our SketchCop Online Academy. We've got some courses coming up here pretty soon. So we try to keep everything budget friendly to encourage law enforcement agencies to use it and forensic science students to learn a new skill set that they can take to the law enforcement agencies that employ them at a cost that's reasonable and that they can afford. And then no, I haven't had difficulty drawing or looking for someone's features. It's basically trying to find a communication style that people understand. And this is where the real art comes in with the interviewing, is that you have to try to adapt to their language style and their way of speaking and their terminology that they use, or that they're comfortable with using describing someone's face. So potential sources of errors in facial reconstruction would be pretty much not following the scientific information provided by pathologists and forensic anthropologists. And again, a lot of the stuff you're dealing with is soft tissue. And so it's a good mix of science and artistic license in studying people's lifestyles. I'll give you an example. I had a case one time back in the 90s, and they determined that the bodies have been buried 25 years. And so I took the information from the anthropologist, and I took a look back at how these people were thought to be outlaw motorcycle gang members by the clothing left on the skeletons. And I went back and looked and see how the bikers would be wearing their hair and such, and I modeled the face based upon what I knew about outlaw motorcycle people and their artifacts and their hairstyles that they would wear. Similar looking people based upon sketches, yes, and that's where I tell people that this is just a filter. In other words, facial composite is more of an elimination tool than an identification tool. So if you have a police report that has a description, like let's just say a beach city here in California, a male white, 18 years old, 5'7", 150 pounds, blonde hair and blue eyes. That would match about 100,000 people down on the beach. But if you do a facial composite, now you've got a face sketch that, although it matches the person's physical description, it's highly unlikely that there are same two people on there's two people on the beach that look the same as that sketch. So it's more of a filtering tool. Yeah. So how precise is the tissue depth? It's precise enough. There's still different countries doing studies on tissue depth studies, either on live people using I think like ultrasound versus using cadaver studies and such. And so what Dr. Carl Stefan at the University of Queensland in Australia did was he's every few years he collects all the tissue data that he can go out and collect or people submit, and he puts it all together and creates averages for thin people. I think the categories are thin, more gracile, average, uh, heavy or obese. So they have different ones, and you're talking about millimeters. So even if you're a millimeter or two off, the eye is not going to see it, and it just kind of helps you approximate that person's facial build, basically.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Street. We are very
Anybody,
grateful for
yeah. Amy and anybody else that's interested in learning more about the software, they can reach out to me on either social media or send me an email with the email address there.
exactly. So please, if you have any further questions, you can reach Mr. Michael on his email. It's on the screen right now, so you can ask him your questions. Thank you very much. And for those who just joined, welcome to the Forensic Summit 2025. We have very distinguished and intellectual guest here to come and show us and teach us something little about forensics. So without wasting much time, I'd like to introduce our second speaker, who is in the person, Madam Amy Rosenberry. She joins us from the United Kingdom. She brings a distinguished background in forensic science